Hollywood's golden age may have glittered on screen, but off-screen, it was often a world of heartbreak, betrayal, and hidden scandals. Behind the glamorous premieres and the carefully staged publicity photos, many of the era's most beloved leading men were living through emotional turmoil that studio fixers worked tirelessly to conceal. The men audiences adored, those who embodied romance and heroism on film, were more often than not going home to wives who betrayed them in ways that cut far deeper than box office rivalries. These weren't fleeting indiscretions or whispered flirtations. These were deliberate, ongoing affairs that left Hollywood's biggest stars humiliated and heartbroken, even as they smiled for the cameras. What follows is the untold truth about 10 Golden Age icons whose private lives were a far cry from the perfect images projected upon the silver screen. And in some cases, the humiliation was so complete that the men never even learned the full extent of their wives' betrayals until long after the fact. The first was Humphrey Bogart, Hollywood's ultimate tough guy who could never quite tame his volatile wife. Long before he found real love with Lauren Bacall, Bogart's marriage to his third wife, Mayo Method, was the stuff of nightmares. Mayo, known around town as Sluggy, had earned her nickname due to her violent temper and tendency to lash out during their alcohol-fueled arguments. Their Beverly Hills home became infamous as Sluggy Hollow, a darkly comic twist on Sleepy Hollow, where shouting matches, broken glass, and flying furniture were not uncommon. While Bogart was filming his classics, Mayo reportedly entertained a steady stream of visitors. One neighbor recalled that a certain delivery man seemed to spend far too much time inside whenever Bogey was away. Yet Bogart, bound by the masculine code of the era, couldn't admit publicly that his wife was unfaithful. To acknowledge her affairs would have shattered his carefully crafted tough guy image. Ironically, Mayo's jealous fits over imagined infidelities only grew worse as her own affairs multiplied. During the filming of Casablanca, her visitors became even more frequent. When Bogart finally met Lauren Bacall, it wasn't a cliché case of a man leaving his wife for a younger woman. It was the act of a man finally breaking free from years of private torment. Next came Desi Arnaz, the charming Cuban bandleader whose marriage to Lucille Ball looked like pure perfection on screen. America adored them as the comedic dream couple of I Love Lucy, but off camera, their marriage was anything but idyllic. Desi's infidelities were notorious. His affairs ranged from chorus girls to prostitutes, often conducted so openly that studio executives couldn't keep the scandals contained. One CBS insider remarked that Desi didn't just cheat, he did it in places where he knew he'd be recognized, as though daring Lucy to find out. Yet in a twist few fans knew, Lucille Ball eventually decided to even the score. Tired of enduring public humiliation, Lucy began quietly having affairs of her own, not for passion, but as a form of emotional survival. Unlike Desi, she was cautious and clever, ensuring there was always plausible deniability. According to studio insiders, she may have grown close to at least 2 of her co-stars, though she never allowed the rumors to solidify. Lucy's brilliance lay in her ability to preserve her reputation, while Desi's antics made headlines. Despite the betrayals on both sides, their love for each other never truly faded. Even after their 1960 divorce, they remained emotionally entangled, unable to live together, but incapable of letting go completely. Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood, conquered every romantic role the industry could offer, but his home life told a very different story. Before his famous love affair with Carole Lombard, Gable's earlier marriages showed that even the king wasn't always in control of his castle. His first wife, Josephine Dillon, was 17 years his senior and treated him less like a husband and more like a personal project. She financed his grooming, corrected his speech, and guided his career, but also kept him on a tight social and financial leash. There were rumors that Josephine entertained male friends when Gable was away on set, and those visits neighbors found suspiciously timed. His second wife, Maria Langham, followed a similar pattern. Another older, wealthy woman, she helped secure his place in Hollywood society, but whispers about her own gentleman friend circulated as Gable's fame grew. It wasn't until he met Carole Lombard that Gable found genuine love built on equality rather than arrangement. With her, he was finally himself, not the polished creation of a socialite or a studio, but a man in love. Gary Cooper, iconic for the roles of integrity and honor he played on screen, led a much more complicated life behind his closed doors. His near three-decade marriage to socialite Veronica Rocky Balfe was based upon one premise: don't embarrass each other, and don't get caught. Cooper's affairs were the stuff of legend. His dalliances with Grace Kelly, Patricia Neal, and Ingrid Bergman were open secrets in Hollywood. But Rocky was no little wife sitting at home. She quietly took up relationships of her own, usually with discreet men from her East Coast social circle. Their arrangement wasn't born from indifference, but from mutual understanding. Friends described a unique bond between them, a silent connection that endured despite infidelity. The only time it went awry was when Cooper's affair with Neal turned serious enough to threaten to blow the lid off. For the first and only time, Rocky drew a line in the sand. Affairs were tolerable. Falling in love was not. Cooper eventually ended things with Neal and returned to the safety of this unconventional but enduring marriage. Then there was Mickey Rooney, the boy wonder who could win America's heart but not his wife's loyalty. During the late 1930s and early 1940s, Rooney was one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Yet his personal life was a revolving door of heartbreak. Over 8 marriages, the pattern remained the same. Rooney cheated, his wives retaliated, and the unions imploded. His first marriage to Ava Gardner set the tone. Despite his fame, Rooney's small stature and restless energy made him insecure. Gardner soon tired of his gambling, womanizing, and absences. When she discovered his infidelities, she reportedly found comfort in the arms of billionaire Howard Hughes. Mickey was too distracted by his own adventures to notice until gossip reached the studio. Later wives followed a similar path. Betty Jane Phillips turned to a musician, Martha Vickers to a director. Yet Rooney, despite his serial cheating, reacted with outrage whenever a wife strayed. Colleagues remembered his explosive jealousy whenever anyone hinted at even the suggestion of disloyalty. By his 5th marriage, the pattern had become so predictable that people around Hollywood placed bets on how soon it would collapse. Mickey Rooney could make the world laugh, but behind the spotlight, his life was a tragic farce of betrayal and wounded pride. These stories peel back the glittering facade of old Hollywood to reveal the fragile, flawed humanity beneath. The Golden Age may have produced timeless films, but its stars lived through dramas far more heartbreaking than anything the studios could script. Errol Flynn carved his name into Hollywood legend with his striking good looks and irresistible charm to become the ultimate swashbuckler of his era. But behind his on-screen adventures lay a marriage filled with off-screen intrigue. His first wife, the French actress Lily Demita, created a household where faithfulness was the only adventure neither partner pursued. 2 lovers with roving eyes occupied one mansion and a collection of swords, living out their own private drama. Flynn was a renowned womanizer who once said, "I like my whiskey old and my women young," leading a life dedicated to self-indulgence. What many didn't know, however, was that in Demita, Flynn found a partner just as casual about fidelity as he was. At the time they met, she was an older, worldly European star, and anyone close to the couple knew that monogamy would never be part of their marriage, least of all to Flynn himself. According to friends and staff, this was an unspoken understanding of the couple's marriage. Each could have affairs so long as the appearances were kept up. Their parties at their Mulholland Drive mansion were the stuff of legend. Guests remember the surreality of Flynn, in one room, blatantly flirting with starlets while, in another, Demita chatted up her own bevy of admirers. The couple kept separate bedrooms, connected by a sitting room. Household staff often reported visitors occupying those rooms who were certainly more than friends. Their fiery tempers and passionate reconciliations kept the affair going, if chaotically. They didn't just argue, they performed their arguments, remembered one neighbor. Shouting in multiple languages and throwing valuables were followed by equally dramatic reunions. The 6 tumultuous years proved eventually too much for even the 2 of them. Their marriage finally burned itself out in 1942, exhausted by jealousies and emotional warfare neither one could maintain. William Holden personified the quintessential American leading man, handsome, confident, and endlessly appealing. Thanks for performances as iconic as Sunset Boulevard and The Bridge on the River Kwai. He was one of the most admired Hollywood stars. But his long marriage to actress Brenda Marshall was a more complicated story. Their 1941 to 1971 union seemed a model of Hollywood stability to the public. Behind the polished image, though, was a relationship founded upon quiet compromise and mutual understanding rather than fidelity. Holden's affairs were famous, involving co-stars such as Grace Kelly and Audrey Hepburn. His charm was impossible to resist, one colleague said. And he didn't hide his relationships. What the public rarely knew was that Brenda Marshall refused to be the helpless wife. After years of watching Holden's indiscretions, she made a calculated choice. She would preserve the marriage and family life, but find emotional connection elsewhere. Friends described her private relationships as refined and respectful, an antidote to the chaos of Holden's lifestyle. While he courted women publicly, she built quiet friendships with cultured, intelligent men who valued her grace and strength. When Holden returned from film shoots, they slipped effortlessly into the public role of the devoted Hollywood couple, raising their children and maintaining appearances. They had an unspoken agreement, a family friend recalled. She never questioned his behavior, and he never acknowledged hers. Their love endured, not with passion, but with mutual respect. For 30 years, their marriage was an elegant balance between reality and illusion, a partnership held together by understanding rather than romance. Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh personified golden glamour in 1950s Hollywood. Young, glowing, and magnetic, they were the picture-perfect couple every magazine adored. But behind that carefully polished facade, their marriage crumbled under the weight of Curtis's relentless infidelity. He had long been known for his insatiable appetite for women, and marriage did nothing to change that. Tony never stopped being a kid in a candy store, a colleague recalled. Fame only heightened that need. Conquests came one after the other, from co-star to extra, while the media kept up the illusion of their perfect union. But Janet Leigh's reaction was very different from the submissive patience imagined. She was no victim, a close friend insisted. As it slowly dawned on her that Tony would never reform, she began to form quiet, emotionally satisfying liaisons of her own with co-stars, and even with a director. Her love relationships were thoughtful, based on emotional intimacy rather than fleeting passion. Unlike Tony's illicit couplings, Janet's attachments were discreet and meaningful, bringing her some semblance of stability in the midst of chaos. The contrast was dramatic. Tony's meaningless affairs called attention to themselves, while Janet's emotional attachments threatened to dismantle the marriage from within. Finally, it was her growing emotional distance that ended their union in 1962 after 11 years. Though the tabloids blamed Tony's philandering, those close to them believed it was Janet's growing emotional maturity and her recognition of the shallowness of their marriage that brought it to an end. The life of Robert Walker was a tragic reflection of love lost and public humiliation. Known for his tender portrayals of sensitive characters, and later for his chilling performance as Bruno Anthony in Alfred Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, Walker faced heartbreak off-screen when his wife, Jennifer Jones, began a very public affair with the most powerful man in Hollywood, producer David O. Selznick. Once a young Hollywood dream, Walker and Phyllis Isley, as she was then known, met while both were acting students, married in 1939, and pursued stardom together. In 1941, though, everything changed when Jones caught the eye of Selznick. Captivated by her beauty, he signed her to a personal contract, renamed her, and molded her into a star. The transformation came with a price. Their professional relationship evolved into an affair that everybody in Hollywood knew, and Selznick's power made it impossible for Walker to protest. He was helpless, said a friend. The man taking his wife was the man who could destroy his career. While Jennifer's fame reached new heights, including her Oscar-winning performance in The Song of Bernadette, Walker's personal and professional life unraveled. Humiliated and helpless, he turned to alcohol, and his once promising career slowly began to falter. Jennifer divorced him in 1945 and married Selznick in 1949, leaving Walker to battle loneliness and depression. Despite a brief resurrection with his brilliant role in Strangers on a Train, his life ended tragically in 1951 at just 32 due to a reaction to sedatives mixed with alcohol. His story remains one of Hollywood's most painful examples of personal betrayal and professional ruin. George Sanders made a career out of playing cynical, world-weary men who regarded love and life with irony. Off-screen, however, that cynicism was put to the test when he married Hungarian beauty Zsa Gabor in 1949. Sanders, the intellectual Englishman, and Gabor, the flamboyant socialite, seemed an unlikely match. He was refined and detached. She was dazzling and impulsive. Sanders was enchanted by her energetic personality at first. After that, he was stuck in a living nightmare of public embarrassment. Gabor's flirting was legendary. She didn't even try for discretion. She would flirt openly, right in front of him. A friend remembered. It was like she enjoyed watching him squirm. Her rumored lovers included Dominican diplomat Porfirio Rubirosa and even Frank Sinatra, and she pursued them as brazenly as she courted attention. For Sanders, for whom dignity was all, the humiliation became unendurable. Tabloids feasted on Gabor's escapades, depicting him as the ultimate cuckold in stark contrast with his screen persona. Still, his fascination with her never really diminished. He veered wildly between attempts at winning her back with vast gifts and sour insults, which betrayed his pain. 5 tumultuous years later, he filed for divorce in 1954, citing extreme cruelty. In an odd twist, he later married her sister Magda, raising many eyebrows. Was Sanders ever able to gain closure from Zsa? Sanders' disillusionment grew worse with time, and by his later years, the bitterness that once had been a screen persona became his life. His haunting farewell note, "Dear world, I am leaving because I am bored," written before his death in 1972, reflected the exhaustion of a man who, through movies and through marriage, had seen through the myth of Hollywood romance. Hollywood's golden age was all about perfection romance, devotion, and eternal love outwardly, while a world of deceit and heartbreak was hidden. These leading men, adored by millions, often returned home to betrayal and emotional pain that no script could disguise. Some, like Humphrey Bogart and Clark Gable, eventually found true love beyond the turmoil, while others, such as Robert Walker and George Sanders, were consumed by it. For actors like Gary Cooper and William Holden, marriage became a carefully managed illusion, a performance that kept up appearances but masked the reality. These untold stories remind us that behind Hollywood's dazzling facade were real human lives, fraught with pain, longing, and imperfection. The men who defined romance on screen were, in reality, just as vulnerable as anyone else to love's betrayals. Perhaps that's the enduring truth of the golden age. No matter how powerful the studios or how perfect the publicity, the human heart could never be fully scripted. So if you enjoyed this trip through Hollywood's secret history, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more untold stories from the golden era of cinema. Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know which legend you'd like to explore next. Thanks for watching, and until next time.